So you mentioned a few things in your talk about places to store data. I'm wondering about the commitment of institutions into the future to preserve that. Not only data sets, perpetual access, well, until the company is sold or merged. Right. And I worry as a librarian about these big data sets. It's wonderful that we can put them somewhere so other people can use them and interact with them. How do we envision the commitment to move that forward into the future?
I really worry about that commitment thing too. And you know, it's so easy to say, I'm setting up a repository today. You know, really sustaining the enterprise permanently is often much harder. I do want to sort of qualify some things though. Early on in a lot of the discussions about managing data, we used words like perpetuity and forever and you know, really scary words like that. And we've really kind of, I think, in the field largely backed off on that. We don't know. We know there are a few things we truly do want to keep indefinitely, but there's a large class of material that we don't understand the reuse patterns on. And the thinking now is sort of keep it 10 years. And let's reassess it at the end of 10 years. And 10 years is pretty easy because it's basically preserving bits for 10 years because the sort of formats and semantic frameworks around it don't drift that much in 10 years as a general rule. They drift a lot more in 100 years. So when you start going for the sort of deeper time, the investments ratchet up. But there's a lot of sort of take it a step at a time and see where we are thinking. Having said that, I believe there's also an enormous demand for a sort of an exploration of the calculus of data preservation under resource constraints. If I say, you know, we can keep so many terabytes, now you have to make decisions about which terabytes you're going to keep. Our sort of philosophical basis for doing that is ghastly. There's a piece of it where you can do economics, where you can say, I can recreate the experiment. It may be very expensive to do it, but you know, I could recreate it if I had to. And there's a lot of engineering that sort of falls in that category. There's a lot of natural observation where once you toss it, it's gone forever. You know, you can't recover yesterday's weather, or the, you know, the data about the spread of a certain organism that, you know, 50 years ago. Once that's gone, that's gone. So does that mean that we always favor observational data? There are ethical questions that come in here. What happens when you're dealing with the last records of a language that's dead now? Or as another very salient point, you're running clinical trials that put humans at risk. You're going to say, oh, well, it was kind of expensive to, you know, keep this data, so if we need it again, we'll just kill off, you know, one of the experimental arms in another trial. That's probably not acceptable in this society, and I'd suggest that increasingly that's creeping past human subjects into primate research and, you know, research with cute rabbits and all kinds of things. I think there's a real complicated sort of economic, ethical, cultural stew of questions there that are very badly understood at this point. I also, I know I'm going on a little bit, but to cycle back to something else you were talking about preservation, there's a whole nother dimension going on here that I worry deeply about, which is not just scientific evidence, but cultural evidence. When we have a generation of scholars who want to understand what people today were thinking and doing and how they spent their time and and this sort of thing. Much of that data is in private hands. Much of it's not being at all. We have very bad methods for transitioning it into the stream of scholarly evidence, and I think we're really, you know, on the edge of a full-blown crisis in that area. Everything from business records to you know, sort of social trails. Look at the amount of time that people spend playing video games. Mm-hmm. Look at the size of that industry relative to the movie industry or the book industry, and who's collecting this and to what depth? I mean, the resource allocation in terms of capturing that as cultural evidence is just a joke relative to its scope, you know, as an activity right now.